Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode with the original OG, aka Uncle the Corporal, from OmegaFMRadio.co.uk, where we give you a little bit of this and a little bit of that, trying to be the voice of reasoning. Now, I've never asked anybody to agree with me. However, what I would say is to understand or understand or overstand where I'm coming from. If you don't agree with me or you can't understand where I'm coming from, then there is no reason for us to have no kind of conversation because it's going to be frivolous and holding any kind of conversation won't make no sense. Anyway, please share, subscribe, leave your comments. They're well appreciated. Mr. Trevor Dixon.
Omega, Omega, Omega FM.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trevor Dixon. All right, now the last video I done, I spoke about Charlie Kirk and I said he wasn't a racist. And in your comments, you call me all kind of name. I'm crazy. I've lost the plot. I should do more research on Charlie Kirk. As I said, I'm not saying he wasn't prejudiced. Oh, he was very prejudiced. So some of the statements I heard him making, he's prejudiced, but I didn't see him being a racist. However, if you want me to show and prove why I said he's a racist, I will do a video. Just leave it in your comments. As I said, your comments will be well appreciated. All right. Now, Candace Owens. I believe Candace Owens is a very brave woman. Very, very brave woman. She has taken on the whole establishment of what you call the Zionists. And she's not holding back no punches. Now, she, as a what they call a media influencer, she is the number one. Maybe why she's number one is because she's not getting a paycheck from whether it be CBS, NBC, ABC, BBC, any one of those social influencers. Basically, they can speak the truth from the way their perspective. Now, she's gone full blast. Now, most people in our community throughout the past, when they make a statement, their statement is valid, but this so-called Zionist will come down on you like a ton of brick with all their organization and get you fired or lose your job or, blackball you. And that means that most of the time it's people that work for corporations. Now, take Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon made a statement, right? His statement was a valid statement, but he recanted. He apologized because the powers to be from the Zionists came down on him like a ton of brick. Whoopi Goldberg, she made a statement. They came down on her like a ton of brick. She recanted. She apologized. For what? Diane Abbott, she made a statement. They came down on her like a ton of bricks. For what? She made a valid statement. All right, Professor Griff, and a whole host of other individuals that's in the public domain. They make a statement, they recant and say, oh, they apologize. But what are they apologizing for? They have no reason to apologize. 几张大伙呀？等候。哎呦我的妈！All right, they're the number one bullies on the planet Earth right about now. Throughout history of history, for a small little group of people, and what Jake said they're a race. I don't know how they become a race of their own, but that's what they're saying. All right? But look at the atrocity that they've caused. All right? That they've become the number one pariah on the planet Earth. All right? And because they got the United States supporting them in everything and anything that they want to do, all right? They just do it. Now, we as Africans, we're supposed to look at a certain situation. Some of our African scholars have spoken about Palestine and Israel's situation. But you and I should not feel no way to criticize Israel or anybody for the wrongs that they're doing. But for this particular situation, it's Israel and Palestine. Now remember what His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie stated, right? He stated, I think it was the United Leagues, right? I can't remember. But what did he say? Today it shall be us and tomorrow it shall be you, right? That was a true statement because today, at that period of time, it was Ethiopia. The following day, it was a world war. But using that same phrase, today it shall be us. Today it shall be you. Tomorrow it shall be us. Meaning that we as black people, it can happen to us at any given time. Because if you have two kissing cousins, white Ashkenazis and white Arabs fighting one another, then imagine what they would want to do to us and their kissing cousins, right? So anytime we see atrocities, we can speak about these atrocities without anybody labeling us, because throughout history of history, nobody's been through what we've been through. There's no question about it. You may not like what I'm saying, but you can't deny it. Take a
And since
listen.
we're talking about the Holocaust, I have to just say this honestly. I'm not gonna say I don't care, but the Holocaust is being inflated. Black people have been murdered and genocided 50,000 times worse than what happened to y'all. And we are still I'm not done. Okay, let me give you the numbers. Arabs killed 40 million Africans. And that was just during the Arab slave trade. Then the Arabs educated Caucasoids on how to do it. Caucasians have killed over 100 million Indians alone, let alone Africans. So Arabs killed 40 million Africans. Arabs educated Caucasians how to do it. Caucasians, aka Spaniards, which are white people who speak Spanish because Spanish was created in Italy, came and then they killed 20 million Africans. And then the Dutch came and they killed 40 million. And then the British came and they killed 30 million. Then the British came back in the 1900s underneath Leopold and killed 14 million Africans in the early 1900s. Then Mussolini with Hitler came behind him and killed 40 million. And then when the Pilgrims came over here, the Dutch, the French, and the Spaniards was already over here murdering people. But then the European Pilgrims came and they killed 100 million just off zoonotic diseases and bad hygiene. So if we were to add up the body count of black people in comparison with the Holocaust, I don't honestly want to hear that shit. You got more black people in jail today around the world than that can compete with amount of Jews that died during the Holocaust. So my main thing is, if and I'm not saying that the Holocaust was good, but what I'm saying is, y'all trying to do with y'all trying to use the Holocaust the same way that the LGBTQ is trying to use gay rights. Y'all are trying to put y'all plights out of order. Yes, you have a plight, but you got to respect rank and file. The Holocaust is not the number one historical horrible event. It's like number 2 or 3. What happened to us is horrible. And I'll tell you why. Even though your history is completely made the fuck up, you still got it. I got real history. I got real pyramids. I got real pharaohs. I got real ancestors that I don't even know about because it's still being hidden from me today. Why? Because the creators of the school curriculum in this country are Jews. And they lying to me about who I am. And that's a fact.
All right, that's my son, young Pharaoh Allah, breaking it down to you. Why am I playing this? Is that so long as you don't say harm, kill, hurt anybody, you're supposed to be able to stand up and say, even to the Zionists, without any retribution, or you feel that you're going to be, you can't defend yourself in that conversation. Because when they say 6 million Jews or 6 million Ashkenazis passed away under Hitler, right? You could say 125 mil. Our African scholars have already stated that, whether it be Dr. Hendrik Clark, Dr. Ben, Ashra Kwesi, Ivan Van Sertima, you name them. They've already stated, they've compiled information together saying, yes, ours is 125 million. Not only that, throughout history of history, nobody has been through the degradation of what we've been through. So we have the right to speak on certain things without being labeled anti-Semitic. Okay, that we've got to, every minute, we've got to apologize. And right now, the way it is, the way the world is looking at this little pisshole place called Israel, they're the most hated. And in the black community, recently, And I'm not supporting it. I'm not condoning for what's being said. But I understand. They're saying Hitler made a mistake. What kind of mistake did Hitler make? He should have killed all of them. Now, I can't condone that. I can't agree with that. However, I understand where they're coming from because we're looking at what's taking place in the current public domain right now. That's what it is, and you can see the atrocities. And then when you say something, they want to label you anti-Semitic. Dr. Ben, explain it to them for me, please.
You hear only about a Holocaust. One. What happened to your Holocaust that's still going on? What happened to the 50 million Africans, your brothers and sisters, that were murdered in Munamatapa, now called South Africa, under Cecil John Rhodes? Do you know that black folks take scholarship in honor of John Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes? Because you don't know. Nobody told you who Rhodes was. Rhodes make Hitler look like a playboy. You don't know about the Holocaust with Frederick Lugard and Dr. Jameson in what is today called Nigeria, with Goldie and others when they took over the colony. You don't know about the Holocaust with Leopold II, the Vanderbilts and the Pews and the others, the Rockefellers and so forth, when they took over what was called Manicongo in those days and changed it to the Congo Free State.
Ashkenazi.
How many millions? 22 million were exterminated. African women pregnant were placed in the middle of roads and 3 limbs put to both arms and then cut with the horses and split them open and the babies fell out as punishment that the men would see it. These are records. They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans will come later to revenge these causes. But that isn't mentioned as Holocaust in any of your textbooks, because it was only Africans being exterminated. I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that when you write and when you do your research that you use the appropriate term, genocide, Holocaust, wherever it applies.
And that's one of our African scholars, Dr. Ben. Use it where it applies. You're having a debate with anybody and they're going to label you, let them know. So long as you're not telling no lies, as long as you're not going out and say shoot, kill, harm, rape, burn, then yes, you can stand up there in any place at any given time, and the first thing you're going to be saying to them, my history tells me it's 125 million. Nobody put together, has experienced the slaughter and the degradation, humiliation, like what we've been through. However, we're still here, so we can say what is right from what is wrong. Now, they're going to label my African Shining Prince anti-Semitic. Now, my African Shining Prince, from the minute they said that, I know they went left field, because Malcolm X was never anti-Semitic. But this Israel thing has been going on for the longest, and we know the story already. I've done a video about that, that they saying that this piece of land is ancient and it was promised to them by their God. Well, what about my God? What about your God? What about the atheist? What about the agnostic? What about even the Satanists? Everybody will have an excuse, but we know the reason why they're doing what they're doing, because it's in the white man's genes. They've done it throughout history. They went to the place called America, and look what they've done to the Native Americans. They slaughtered them. New Zealand, Australia, Africa, the Caribbean, all these places they've been, and they've reaped havoc. So when my African Shining Prince makes a statement, it's a valid statement.
The Palestinian struggle is not just a cry for justice. It's a blistering battle for the most fundamental human rights that every living soul on this planet should inherit by birthright. It's an unyielding resistance against the oppressive, suffocating grip of occupation and the callous denial of the most basic human dignity. Just as the civil rights movement in the United States fought against the chains of racial discrimination, so too do the Palestinian people strive to shatter the chains of occupation and tyranny. Never forget, my friends, that the Palestinians, much like African Americans in the United States, have been subjected to a heart-wrenching history of suffering and torment. The birth of Israel in 1948 brought forth the mass expulsion and dispossession of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their ancestral homes and land. This is a historic injustice that continues to haunt the lives of Palestinians to this very day. The situation in Palestine serves as a brutal reminder of the consequences of colonialism and the ruthless dispossession of indigenous peoples. It is an agonizing reminder that the fight for justice knows no borders, and we must stand united in solidarity with all oppressed peoples, whether they reside in the United States, South Africa, or anywhere around the world. Let's be unequivocally clear. Advocating for the rights of the Palestinian people is not synonymous with denying the rights and security of the Jewish people. The fight for justice in Palestine is not an assault on any particular group, but an unwavering stand against the policies of a Zionist state that has for far too long stripped Palestinians of their rights. We must remember that numerous Jewish voices also resound in the calls for justice and peace in Palestine, and their voices must not be silenced. In our relentless pursuit of justice for the Palestinian people, we must also acknowledge that it is in the best interest of the entire world to seek a just and enduring solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is a pursuit in the name of peace, stability, and the dignity of all mankind. But let me underscore this. The battle for justice in Palestine is not merely a political struggle, it's an elemental moral battle. It's the fight for the most basic human rights of a people who have suffered these injustices for far too long. It's the fight for the right to exist in peace and security, free from the ceaseless specter of violence and dispossession. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. I implore every person of conscience, regardless of their origins or beliefs, to stand steadfast with the Palestinian people in their unwavering quest for justice by any means necessary. Let us unite in building a world where every soul can live in freedom and dignity, where the rights of every individual are not just respected, but celebrated. The struggle for justice in Palestine is a universal fight, a resonating echo of the battles waged by oppressed people across the globe. It's a battle we must champion, a torch we must carry, and a legacy we must honor. Thank you, and free Palestine.
And that's my African shining prince, the one and only Malcolm X. Our ancestors has reached out to us to tell us that when we see injustice, we're supposed to stand on the platform and speak the truth and speak it forever without have to compromise in our morals. All right? So at the end of the day, remember what this whole thing is about. That if anybody want to say to you that, oh, you're anti-Semitic, all right, because you're saying you don't agree with the policies of the Zionists or Israel or some of the people that call themselves Orthodox, whatever, all right, that does not mean that you're anti-Semitic, and you can explain it because you've got the history to support it. Ask them about slavery. Ask them what they've been through. Ask them if they've seen a movie called Goodbye Uncle Tom. All right? Ask them. And they cannot deny. They may not like what you say, but they can't deny. Now here goes somebody else, another one of our ancestors, because this problem has been going on for the longest, and it's going to continue going on and on and on and on. And this is why when we look at the media, whether it be social media or the commercial TV or it's the commercial radio, we hear the same thing over and over, how brutal this place called Israel, these Ashkenazis are. All right? And that's why in our community, and I said it before, I don't agree with the statement, but I understand that Hitler made a mistake. Hitler should have killed all of them because we're looking at what's taking place right now. As I said, I don't agree with that statement. I repeat it unequivocally. I do not agree with that statement, but I understand where they're coming from. Listen to one of our other
Would you want
ancestors.
a Gaddafi or an Arafat or a Castro to be a future president of South Africa?
One of the mistakes which some political analysts make is to think that their enemies should be our enemies. That we can and we will never do. We have our own struggle, which we are conducting. We are grateful to the world for supporting our struggle. But nevertheless, we are an independent organization with its own policy. And the attitude of every country towards, our attitude towards any country is determined by the attitude of that country to our struggle. Yasser Arafat, Colonel Gaddafi, Fidel Castro support our struggle to the hilt. There is no reason whatsoever why we should have any hesitation about hailing their commitment to human rights as they are being demanded in South Africa. Our attitude is based solely on the fact that they fully support the anti-apartheid struggle. They do not support it only in rhetoric. They are placing resources at our disposal for us to win the struggle. That is the position.
Having said that, I think I would be dishonest if I did not express profound disappointment with the answer that Mr. Mandela gave to the previous question, because it suggests a certain degree of amorality. It suggests that what these people do in their own countries, what a Gaddafi does in Libya, what a Castro does in Cuba, is totally irrelevant, even in terms of the issue of human rights, as long as they support the cause of the ANC. I hope that is not what Mr. Mandela meant, and I would hope that he would clarify that issue further.
Mr. Mandela.
And at the same time, want me to be involved in the internal affairs of Libya and Cuba. I refuse to do that. As far as Yasser Arafat is concerned, I explained to Mr. Sigmund that we identify with the PLO because just like ourselves, they are fighting for the right of self-determination. I went further, however, to say that the support for Yasser Arafat in his struggle does not mean that the ANC has ever doubted the right of Israel to exist as a state legally. We have stood quite openly and firmly for the right of that state to exist within secured borders. But, of course, as I said to Mr. Sigmund in Geneva and others, that we carefully define what we mean by secure borders. We do not mean that Israel has the right to retain the territories they conquered from the Arab world, like the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank. We don't agree with that. Those territories should be returned to the Arab people.
Mr. Mandela.
I also explained to Mr. Sigmund and company that in our organization we have Jews. In fact, Mr. Gaddafi did not allow us to open our offices in Libya precisely because we had the courage to say to him, we work with the Jews in our organization. And he didn't allow us to open an office until February this year, when he had to accept us as we are. We are not prepared to be swayed by anybody. We have an independent policy which we assert no matter with whom we discuss. The Jewish leader have any doubts about our stand, I am prepared to address them and to allay their concern, because they are a very important community both in South Africa and, of course, in the States. And I'm prepared to iron out any differences that might exist. But they must know what our stand is. Arafat is a comrade in arms, and we treat him as such. And as I have said, we have many Jews, members of the Jewish community in our struggle, and they have occupied very top positions. But that does not mean to say that the enemies of Israel are our enemies. We refuse to take that position. You can call it being political or a moral question, but for anybody who changes his principles depending on whom he is dealing, that is not a man who can lead a nation.
All right. So that's Nelson Mandela. All right. Now, as I said to you before, the purpose of this is because every time we turn on our TV, the radio, the newspaper, the first thing comes up, what Israel has done. The ICC, the ICJ, human rights, Doctors with Borders, Save the Children. Nearly every organization on the planet Earth has said Israel, what Israel is doing is wrong. It's Ashkenazi. And we as Africans have a tendency, anytime we criticize somebody, right, we always want to apologize. You're not supposed to apologize because you've not said nothing wrong, because your history determines the facts of what takes place in the past, the present, and the future. All right. Now, here goes somebody. All right. Idi Wadada, Field Marshal Amin, step
Mecca
to
and
me.
Medina should be today under the control of the Israelis. But because they lost the war in the first 5 days, they couldn't continue even further, and that is why it is stopped. But their aim is to capture Mecca and Medina. All the holy places all over the world should be controlled by the Israelis. This is their aim. I have got these books with me.
Listen.
And I am sure after we finish here, I will give you the copy of the book, but you read my copy today here, and you give it back to me, because if Israel find it, they will buy the whole copy, and they don't want the people in the world to see this book. I will give you, it is here. It is a book of the Isrealis, which is the teaching of.
All right, you see this book, The Prodigals of the Jewish Elders? This was done on the turn of the 19th century. Now, what I'm going to do, right, on my next video, I'm going to break down the Prodigals of the Jewish Elders, because they're saying it's fake, but I'll get into it the next time. All right. Field Marshal, what did I mean? Step to me.
The elders of the Israelis, of the Zionists. The black people in Africa, in America, must be the president of the United States of America, must be the secretary of state like Kissinger. They are more brilliant than Dr. Kissinger. Kissinger is not very intelligent. Kissinger always go to the weakest leaders. He never go to Gaddafi. He never come to General Amin. He fears us. And as a doctor, you must be very clean, very smart. You behave very well like a person. And also, you are not too drunk. You are the one who should advise the public. You should advise General Amin not to drink. This is very important. This is the most important, because if a public learn that you are a drunkard, automatically they lose confidence, and even they can say that if I am going to get operation by that doctor, he's a drunkard, he will not do anything, and they will completely refuse. I am telling you sincerely, and it is true. I must be frank to you, and I tell you this, because also to drink and overdrunk, it is not very good. You will not even enjoy.
All right, so that is Wadada Amin, the Field Marshal. All right. Now, as I said, the information here that I'm giving to you is really and truly
Would you want
for you to be able to stand up and say, what you see, what you hear is totally wrong. All right? It's wrong. For them to want to criticize you and label you as anti-Semitic. You're not anti-Semitic anything. You stand on the platform of truth and rights. So as I said to you before, no matter where you go, so long as you don't say harm anybody, hurt, rob, kill, you're supposed to stand up on the platform when it comes to situations like this. And the first thing you're going to do, you can refer back to my son, young fear of Allah, all right? When he's going through and saying how many millions of us died, or to Dr. Ben to support your argument, and whatever else you say after that, you can support it, whether it be through how brutal the Portuguese was, or the Arabs was to black people during a period of their slavery, how the Portuguese passed it over to the Spaniards passed it over to the British passed it over to the so-called Caucasian Americans, and so forth, right? Anywhere they go, they destroy the place. So you can stand up on a platform and debate hard, and your number one thing is our Holocaust. And then you can go to Malcolm X, our African Shining Prince. These are our ancestors. They've left something behind for us to stand on the platform and saying, yes, this is right or this is wrong. Then we can go to Nelson Mandela. Then we can go to Idi Amin. And with Idi Amin, he went through the protocols of the Jewish elders. On my next video, I'm going to go through that to show you how evil and corrupt within the last 100 years, right, that this one little pissing ass place can dictate to the world that we as Africans can't say nothing without being condemned. Right? Forget about everybody else. Us, especially us, they condemn us. And yet still, we've got a history to support ourselves, to say this is what it is all about. And on that note, listen, please subscribe, leave a comment, share. Your comments will be appreciated. and I'll catch you on the rebound, the most high willing, in the future. Peace one. I'm out.